And so what I hope to talk about today, guys, okay, I hope to eliminate a ton of the fears that we have when it comes to sharing our faith. Our culture, our society in general, doesn't exactly smile when it comes to sharing faith, does it? I mean, there's two things you're not technically supposed to talk about. Faith and politics, right? Those are things that kind of are off the table, right? Because why? They divide people. You know? And so we just don't go there. We just don't. But then we have this burden where God's like, hey, go make disciples. Go tell people. How are they going to believe unless they hear? And then how are they going to hear unless God sends somebody to share? It's this tension of hey, what do we do with that? And so what I hope to talk about today is I will have to break down this whole, how we can live out this purpose of multiplying even our faith in people. And by the way, God made us to multiply and reproduce ourselves for better or for worse. You notice that? You notice you ever make the same decisions that your parents made? The things that you hated in your parents, you find yourself doing the similar things, right? We are made to reproduce, right? For better or for worse. In fact, it's even scientifically now, your decisions are even genetic right now. The decisions that you make, you pass on to your kids. They're more predisposed to make the same decisions. Did you know that? Right? That's why if you have alcoholism, you're more likely to spread alcoholism to your kids, or you have any other addiction, they're more likely to go down that path. It's genetic, it's scientific, it's the way we're made. Well, it's the same thing with our faith. And so what I hope to talk about today is how to eliminate all that fear, all the barriers, all the scary. In fact, Jesus is going to share two words that I hope will set us free today. Two words that when it comes to sharing our faith will probably change. Hopefully, it changed my perspective. Hopefully, it'll change your whole perspective on how you share your faith in just two simple words. Maybe we'll talk about it next week. See you guys. Have a good... If you'd like to go there, go with me. There's Bibles everywhere. We're going to be in Matthew chapter 4, verse 18. It says this. It says, while walking by the Sea of Galilee, he, that's Jesus, saw two brothers, Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. Okay? Jesus is walking by the sea, sees two people there. They're fishermen. They're throwing nets into the sea. This is what Jesus says. He said to them, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. The whole point of the message today, guys, are the two most simple yet challenging words in this entire verse. It says, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men, which is, by the way, what all Christians are called to be. Now, mind you, Jesus is being culturally relevant to his audience. They're fishermen. And so he's not just playing on words here. He says, follow me, and you're fishing for fish. Follow me, I'm going to help make you fishers of men, which is exactly what God does for us. It's exactly what God does for us. In fact, it's exactly what God calls us to do. And in fact, I think between 94 and 97% of Christians believe that the best thing that could ever happen to somebody is that they have a relationship with Jesus. I don't know why it's not 100% of Christians don't believe that. There are, but according to a Barna study, 94 to 97% of Christians believe that the best thing that could ever happen to anybody ever is that they have a relationship with Jesus. That's amazing. The question and the challenge is, how do we do that? How do we share our faith? Well, here's the thing. You don't get the promise, I will make you fishers of men, without the premise, follow me. So what we're going to talk about today is follow me and what that looks like. Follow me and what that looks like when it comes to sharing your faith. And hopefully that will change everything about you so that you're not just worried about, how do I make disciples? How do I do this? How do I do this? Stop worrying about that and start following Jesus. That's what we're going to talk about today. So there are three things that it looks like when we follow Jesus. Number one, we're going to find in Acts chapter 1. I'm going to turn there right here. Acts chapter 1, verse 8. You will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, and you will be my witnesses. You will be my witnesses. You're going to receive power. This is Jesus right before he goes up to heaven. Right? He goes, you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, and you will be my witnesses. When you follow Jesus, you become a witness, right? When you follow Jesus, all you're doing is experiencing Jesus and telling people about your experience, right? For most of us, we try to be God's lawyers. Follow me, and you'll be my lawyers throughout the earth, right? You have to argue, you have to prove that God is who he is. No, When we follow Jesus, we become his witnesses. All you're doing is sharing with what you're experiencing. That's it. When it comes to sharing your faith, are you a lawyer or are you a witness? People that are lawyers have to go to school. People that are lawyers have to be articulate. People that are lawyers have all this training, right? Well, guess what, guys? People are going to believe, just so you know, and you know this, but you need to know that I know this. People will probably believe what you say more than what I say. You understand that? Like a pastor? Because we're like paid salesmen is how the world views pastors. Just so you know, we're trained on what to say and how to say it, and it's just kind of like we don't trust them, you know? People will believe your witness over the professional salesman. Do you understand that? You get it? When you are a witness, in fact, the Apostle Paul, Art talked about the Apostle Paul earlier today. I can count 6 times that the Apostle Paul shared his faith with people between the books of Exodus. Between Acts 22 and Acts 26, I can count 6 times that Paul just shared his testimony of what he experienced without quoting a single Bible verse. He didn't quote a single Bible verse on like, hey, this is why you should believe Jesus. No. All he shared was what he witnessed and what he experienced. When you are a follower of Jesus, you become a witness of Jesus. All you're saying is what you're experiencing. And that is so much more powerful than having all the right answers. So for those of you that feel like you can't share your faith in Jesus, are you following Jesus? Do you have any witness to share with somebody? So that's principle number 1, and there's 3 of them. Following Jesus means you have a witness. That you are a witness. That's all it is. You're not a lawyer. Many of us think we need to be lawyers, which is why we're scared to share our faith. But when all you have to do is be a witness, it's like freedom. All you're doing is saying what you're seeing. All you're doing is telling people what you're experiencing. All you're doing is you're not selling anything. You're just sharing. You're not telling people how to live their life. You're just telling them where you find yours. That's all you're doing when you're a witness, when you're a follower of Jesus. That's principle number 1. Let's go to the second part of this verse here. And this is where we're going to camp out the whole day. Matthew chapter 4. Okay? He said to them, follow me and I will make you, okay, fishers of men. I will make you. What am I observing here? I'm observing that God will turn you into something you are not right now. He goes, you're a fisher of fish. That's wonderful. That's amazing. That's noble. But I'm going to take you, and who's going to make you something else? God is going to make you something else. Right? God is the one who's going to transform you, right? God's the one that's going to do it. Yeah, you say, I can't share my faith with people. I don't know enough about Jesus. All you have to do is follow, and he will turn you into a fisher of men. Now, people that are Christians in the room, and I'm talking to you guys right now, people that are Christians in the room, have you experienced that? Like, I never, ever thought that I would be someone who would tell people my faith. I always thought it would just be a kind of a personal thing. I just followed Jesus, and this is where he led me. Right? I just followed Jesus and he turned me into a fisher of men. I was in the Coast Guard. I was a fisher of cocaine. You know, I was just right? Never did I ever think that God would allow me to become a fisher of men. And that was actually my primary mission in the Coast Guard. It wasn't to save sinking boats. It was to save sinking souls. I didn't know that. God did that. God did that. Right? And it's the same way. When you are a follower of Jesus, you don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to have the power. With that verse again, you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes. Jesus is the one that makes you. So not only do you have a witness when you follow Jesus, and you can actually experience it. And by the way, let me ask you guys the question. Just as rhetorical, unless someone wants to. How would your life look if you had never met Jesus? Those of you that are believers, what would your life look like if you had never met Jesus? For those of you that came to Christ this week, you'd be like, I don't know, I just experienced God, you know? But for those of you that have been walking with God for years and years and years, you're like, if I had never actually met Jesus, like, think about how much God works in your life just by following him. Think about how much he's changing in your life just by following. Think about who he's making you into be just by following him, right? It's the power of God to be witnesses. It's the power of God to follow. It's God making us into something we are not right now, right? That's God. Only God can do that. But you get that by following Jesus. You don't get that by yourself. You don't get that by trying hard. You don't get that. You get that by following Jesus. As you follow Jesus, he's the one that changes you. There's something you don't like about yourself now? Follow Jesus. He's the one that changes you, right? That's what he does. So principle number 2 is you get power. When you follow Jesus means you get the witness, the experience of God, that's all. Secondly, when you follow Jesus, you get the power of God in you. Third principle from that verse, I will make you fishers of men. I will make you fishers of men. I'm going to take you into something you are not already. And what this means is I feel like God gives us a path. A path. You're a fisher of men. Think about that analogy for a second. Think about the analogy of being a fisherman, okay? If you're going to be a fisher of men, well, the net that you're using is the gospel. The gospel is, the net that you throw. And you become a fisher of men with the gospel, and the gospel takes people from where they are, and it takes them into a different place. That's what the gospel does. That's what the net is when you're a fisher of men. Well, when you are a fisher of men, guess what? You follow God, and he tells you where to go. He shows you where to go. So it's all this is not on you to convince people into their faith, to talk them into it with your own power, and to go where you think is best. It's like God leads us. Do you guys remember the story where, in fact, there's actually 2 times in the New Testament this happened, actually, which is funny, to the same guy, too, which is amazing. Peter, the fisherman. There was a time that after Jesus died on the cross, he rose again, he came back, and he showed himself to Peter. Peter and with his friends were like, I don't know, what should we do? Jesus died, let's go fishing. Okay? So they went fishing. Jesus approaches them, and they didn't know it was Jesus, actually. They just looked from the shore, and he yelled to them. He said, hey, they didn't catch any fish all night. They've been fishing the entire night, didn't catch anything. Jesus says, hey, take your net, throw it over the right side of your boat, and you'll catch a bunch of fish. They're like, okay, we've been fishing all night, but sure, why not? If you say so. They throw their net over, and guess what? They couldn't even pull up the amount of fish that they had in their net. You know what that is? That's God's voice. That's God's voice telling you what to do. When you follow Jesus, you don't have to know the path. You just have to follow and hear. And sometimes he can be like, hey, take that net, take the gospel and dump it here. And then he's going to produce so much fruit that you can't even bear. There's going to be so much people, Jackie, that come in here that don't even, but you got to be ready for it because God said it. You know what I'm saying? It's like if God says, throw your net here, like the burden is not on you. Those of you that are worried about sharing your faith, the burden is not on you. The burden is being willing. The burden is following. Follow Jesus. He gives you a witness, so you're not a salesman. He gives you, the power because he works inside of you. It's him that turns anybody to Christ. And guess what? He also gives you the path and says, hey, sometimes just throw your net here. Watch what I'll do. That's what God does. That's what God does. So for those of you Christians in the room that feel inadequate, incapable of sharing your faith, here's 3 things I want you to walk away with. God gives you the witness, power, and path. But for those of you that feel like you can't do it, do you guys understand that it's a blessing and a command, right? Go and make disciples. It's a blessing. All authority has been given to God. It's a blessing. But do you understand it's God doing it? Do you understand that the weakest of us in our faith in this room today could convert this entire city if God was behind you? Do you understand that? Do you understand? Do you believe that? If God can take any of us, and God's known for doing that, isn't he? Taking the ones that no one would think, no one would imagine, all we have to do is follow. The invitation isn't to go change the world. The invitation is to follow Jesus, and through that, he can flip everything upside down. So are you willing to follow Jesus? That's the question for today. Are you willing? Are you caught in the tension of how I want to share my faith because I believe it's the best thing that could ever happen to anybody, but I don't know how. And there's a good to wrestle through all that stuff. God, speak to me. Show me what to say. Show me where to go. Give me the strength. Give me the words. All that. But the biggest, most important thing isn't that you check off the list and say, I shared my faith today. The biggest thing is, God, am I following you? That's the invitation. So for those of you that want to share your faith and you feel called to share your faith because God said so, follow Jesus. That's what we walk away with. Because when you follow Jesus, he can flip everything upside down. He can fill you with the testimony, give you the witness, the power, and the path. And so my prayer for you today, and for those of you that haven't received Jesus, For those of you that have been like Peter at the time, a fisher of men, pursuing other things besides God, noble things, great things. They're fishermen. Very noble, very good, amazing. God can change you into something even better, can open your horizon and say, okay, I can stop focusing just on whatever I'm following now that's not of God. And then God can change you into something even greater. Because guess what? Everybody follows something, right? Everybody follows something. Maybe you follow your whatever your parents said. Whatever phrase that kind of guides you. Love your neighbor as yourself, or the golden rule, whatever your parents kind of taught you. You can follow that and let that be the guiding force in your life. Or maybe you can let culture be the one that you're following. The culture, you do what culturally is normal. You grow up, you find a spouse, you buy a house, and you have a mouse. No, I mean, you make kids, whatever culturally it is, that's the cultural path. You work hard, you get a career, you get married, you get a house, you have kids, and then you die. You can follow that. But God can take you from just following culture to following Him, and He can change the culture, right? God can make you so much greater. So listen, if you haven't received Jesus, and you've heard testimonies today, you've heard of this experience, if you haven't experienced, you don't have a witness with God or power, or you haven't received God, here's the invitation, guys. Is there anything holding you back from surrendering your life to Jesus today? Is there anything? Is there anything keeping you from trusting God? If that physical barrier in your life where it's I just can't believe in you, Jesus. I just don't know. Guys, we receive Jesus through faith. It's not blind faith. Clearly, In fact, especially as I was doing all the research and stuff, especially for millennials like me. I'm a millennial. Thank you. I'm a millennial. My name's Kory. Especially for millennials, guys, millennials feel the most equipped to share their faith because we don't believe anybody. We challenge everything, right? Can you prove it? Can you prove it? Can you prove it? Can you prove it? Guys, listen, there's proof for God. History proclaims Jesus did what He did, right? Now, the only challenge for you is, can you experience it? I want you to experience God, who you can't even see. But you see Him move in your life. You see Him change you. And for those of you that have been following God for a while, you're oh yeah, I've experienced God. I would have to be ignorant to not follow Jesus and not believe in Him. And you know this because you've experienced Him, right? If you want to experience God, have the power of God, and have the path of God, you have to receive Jesus. And so I encourage anybody who's not done that yet, who hasn't had that experience of, okay, I still have doubts, and that's okay to have doubts. I still, wrestle. It's okay to wrestle. But God, show yourself to me. Show yourself. That's all the prayer is. God, show yourself that I can believe. Help my unbelief. That's all it is. And I believe God will. So I want to pray for us.